Since the beginning of human history, animals have been trained to serve a variety of purposes. It started with dogs, sheep, and goats, and quickly moved on to horses, birds, and the list goes on. But what about lizards? Can we train lizards? Monitors are the smartest lizards on the planet, and they're also one of the smartest reptiles on the planet. But does this intelligence translate to trainability? With abilities like counting and facial recognition, can they be taught to serve a specific purpose, or are they just too instinctual? When you hear monitor lizard and training in the same sentence, there's pretty much one guy that our mind goes to. A lot of you may recognize this man. This is Joseph Carter, also known as Mink Man here on YouTube.
They call me the Mink Man, and I do various videos training animals, mostly mink and dogs. But as you mentioned, I do dive into other stuff, and I had a wonderful experience with an Argus monitor.
And in this video, we're going to be going over just that, on his experiences on training an Argus monitor to fulfill a specific purpose, as well as diving into some other animal psychology and trying our best to answer the question, just how far can you train a monitor lizard? Stick around, guys, this is going to be a good one. So for those of you that are new, this is Blue, my male Varanus panoptes horni or Argus monitor, who is about a year and 9 months old. If you have seen my videos in the past, you know that I have attempted to teach Blue a couple different behaviors. The behaviors are, 1, to associate a pair of blue tongs with food. As he got older, it transitioned to associating a blue target with food, and the third is to perform an action on command, in this case, tripoding. But unlike myself, Joseph had a specific purpose in mind for his Argus monitor, and he had a problem, a very big problem.
So what happened was I had this, I was doing pest control on it was a feedlot for beef cattle. And we had what seemed to be an unlimited supply of rats. We would hit the place, catch anywhere from, 30, 40 on a slow day to 250, 260 on the biggest days. It was a great opportunity to be able to help out this farmer, but it didn't seem to be ever ending. And it just the farm was so complex and the rats had so many places to go that when we'd attack one area of the farm, they'd end up in another area. And it just seemed to be an unending job.
Now, Joseph needed to eradicate this rat problem.
Because it was unending, we couldn't just knock it all out like I've been doing lately in the winter months when it's cool.
But unfortunately, when the temperatures got too warm, he was not able to use his specially trained mammals.
Mink and dogs included, especially mink, but both creatures need it to be relatively cool in order to work. Mink especially need it, under 70 ideally, unless they're going to be working in the water. And dogs can work up into the, I'd say, mid 80s, even low 90s, as long as you're keeping them hydrated and they're not working too hard. Because this wasn't something we were just knocking out, it was a continual effort. We ended up working a lot in the summer months, which meant I couldn't utilize the mink very much, if at all.
So he needed a creature that could not only work, but could benefit from these higher temperatures.
So my thought was, hey, let's see if we could do it with a lizard. Let's see.
But not just any lizard. He chose one of the most energetic and prey-driven reptiles on the face of the planet, the Argus monitor. An Australian monitor lizard that can grow up to 6 feet in some cases and is one of the top predators of its region. Equipped with razor-sharp claws, vision like a hawk, knife-like teeth, and an even more impressive brain. Would this be enough to train this lizard to fill this specific purpose and ultimately solve this problem? But like training any animal, there were some difficulties and some challenges that had to be overcome during this process.
They're very unforgiving. If you make a mistake, they remember it ridiculously well. They'll remember things you want them to forget and forget the things you want them to remember. They're kind of like working in a accipiter in a way. It's a group of species of birds of prey. They tend to be very kind of lower intelligence, higher instinct. Actually, now that I think about it, there were some weird phases she went through where her hunger was less than I would expect for any monitor. And it was kind of like an enigma. I don't know if she was going through a dormant period, that her body felt like she needed to go through a dormant cycle, because they do have dormant periods there in the dry season.
Yeah, I mean, their range in the wild is so vast. Like, they come from northern Australia, which is tropical, warm and humid year round, but also they can go west, which, like you said, there's a dry period. Sometimes female monitors tend to sometimes be kind of weird with appetite. Sometimes they'll go off food for a little bit. And, you know, as you know, Argus monitors, one of the most famous species for being able to reproduce parthenogenically. So there's always that. I mean, I've seen them lay eggs as early as 9 months, females.
My enclosure was so big and complex, I don't really know if she laid eggs, to be honest.
Could have been duds. Maybe she ate them. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even if she didn't, they would have had to have been fertile and hatched on their own, because I never would have seen them. Because she had deep substrate to dig into and burrow. She had natural burrows that she slept in. It was complex enough in that regard that, I mean, she could have easily laid half a dozen clutches and I never would have known about it, you know? The only way I would have known is if babies come popping out.
Yeah. But there were also some things that she took to extremely fast. Now, while monitors, especially Argus monitors, are extremely smart, one thing is held above all else in their life: food.
The easiest was anything visible. So like any type of visual stimulation for food or signal that she was going to get fed, she responded to and figured out really quick. The auditory one she really struggled with, especially if she was down in her burrow, basically like, hey, I'm hiding out. It was almost impossible to get her to respond. And I don't think it was just a lack of hearing, because I did that when she was loose in her room. I could go around the corner and call her, and a lot of the time she would come pretty well to that. But once she kind of got into the hiding mode, it was like her brain shut off and she had no interest in food.
I've noticed, like you said, they're very visually inclined. So I copied you with the different colored tongues, right? You had the purple tongues, I did the blue tongues. I found that it was very easy to get them to learn when those specific items meant food. So I transitioned eventually from those tongues. He started getting kind of big, so I was like, it's kind of close proximity from my hand. So I transitioned to a ball on a stick target. He knows to hit the target and he'll get food, but he seems to really chase it aggressively and then lock onto the target and kind of forget that he earns a reward. So they're that was my thing.
Exactly. Same exact thing with her. She'd be so obsessed with attacking the tongs that she would ignore the food sitting right next to her.
Yeah. I mean, people, like we say they have a crazy food drive. They have a crazy food drive. I mean, it's unlike anything I've seen in reptiles. Monitors have incredible eyesight, being able to see about 240 degrees around them. And some have even been recorded to track airplanes at over 35,000 feet into the air. But even though they do have these special abilities, such as eyesight, they have the motivation, and they have the intelligence, they're still different from training a mammal.
The detachment of sound, like she didn't respond to sound like a mammal or a bird. Birds of prey very quickly pick up on, hey, that whistle means food, and if they can't see you, they'll come looking for you because they hear you. She didn't grasp that as quickly or as easily as mammals or birds, because I've done falconry, so I'm used to working with raptors. Mainly the over obsession with visual cues and the lack of comprehension of auditory cues.
Yeah, they're very, very intelligent, but I feel like when that food gets around, they kind of snap back to being very instinctual, and they kind of stop thinking, which is what I've noticed is the difference between them and other monitors. Other monitors, you'll bring food around them and they'll still analyze, but Argus monitors, it's night and day.
With any animal, regardless of what you're training, the number one key to training is not intelligence. People always think of intelligence as being key. It's actually motivation. An animal can be relatively stupid or really quite stupid, but if they're motivated enough, they will figure out what you want eventually. But if you can have the smartest animal in the world, but if they're not motivated, it doesn't matter. In fact, it's a huge disadvantage because they get distracted. So they're not motivated and they're smart. I had a buddy who tried training a raven to do things. He says it works perfectly as long as you're in a very sterile environment. But the minute you get them out in the real world, they'll go play with a piece of bark instead of being interested in the food. He said that was the advantage of birds of prey, where they were very focused on food and eating. Corvids, in this case a raven, are so curious about the world around them that they're just too easily distracted by random novel objects, essentially. There's like this happy medium, and dogs have it. They are smart enough to figure out what you want them to, but kind of dumb enough not to call dogs dumb. I mean, they're pretty smart animals, but compared to chimpanzees and ravens and stuff, they're dumb enough not to get distracted by other stuff. But really, I think even if you had a super, super intelligent dog that was, ape-like intelligence, they're still so motivated to figure out what you want that I don't think it would actually be that big of a hindrance. Unlike other animals, dogs' number one goal in their life is to please their master.
Yeah.
A good dog, I should say, that's their number one goal in their life. No other creature has that.
In the end, was this Jurassic Park-esque experiment a success or a failure?
It ended up turning out that the circumstances, it didn't work as planned, but the monitor ended up beautiful pet and really cool. I just wasn't able to do what my goal was, really. I mean, I did it a couple times. We caught 8 mice at a lady's place, but over and over again. Like for me, success isn't doing something once. Success is doing it over and over and
Absolutely.
over again. I wouldn't call it a failure. It was just the circumstances weren't such that it was as useful as I hoped. Maybe a year after getting Raptor, we totally cleaned that job out.
Wow.
So what seemed like an endless supply of rats became no supply of rats.
Mm-hmm.
And so the specific job that I had in mind for Raptor was no longer in existence long before Raptor was big enough to participate. It just, unfortunately, seemed like a fun idea. It was definitely a fun idea, and what seemed like a good idea at the time ended up not working out realistically, just because I wasn't running into ratting jobs in the heat of the summer. Everything I do now, and typically for the last couple of years, has been in the cool time of year, and I haven't really had a situation where I could, even just for an excuse to get the lizard out. It was a lot of fun training Raptor, and I enjoyed my experience with her. It ended up being a female, which had that job not dried up, it would have ended up that she was too small to do rats anyway.
I, for one, can say Joseph's experiment with one of our favorite species of reptile was a privilege to watch unfold. And it's the source of curiosity for many out there, much like Joseph and myself. But if he were to try it again, is there anything he would change?
I would probably do a different species. The species I wanted to do and would have done if it was possible was a perenni. But obvious reasons, that wasn't really an option. The species that are available that I'm curious about, one is quite intense, let's say, and that would be a crocodile monitor. Main reason for not doing that is the extreme complication in housing and the extreme price of acquiring at this point, and their big, long bodies being very, very arboreal. It would just be a complex animal to own. But that would be an intriguing option to consider, though probably not very practical. I would say a more practical option, but then you're running into problems with speed and athletic ability, would be a black-throated monitor. You get one that size, the advantage is they are very, very forgiving when it comes to thermally, so they can handle temperatures that are much, much lower. And because of their body size and shape, they can hold their own body heat. So if you heated one up to appropriate temperatures, you could then take it out in the cold. I'm saying like room temperature, I don't mean actual cold, 75 degrees. If you've got a Parenti shaped monitor, they're going to lose their body heat really, really fast. And they're going to be chilled, even though it's only 75 degrees. They're going to be chilled really quick, and they're going to go back to needing to bask like an Argus. They're obviously not going to have the same prey drive, so I don't know if they're going to have enough prey drive. So anyway, that's an idea. I don't know that it's a good one. They are, like I said, a more slower lumbering animal, definitely more forgiving in temperament, but lacking the spunk and the oomph that you got from the Argus when it comes to food drive, prey drive. Yeah, I mean, those are the two other species I've thought about that if I was to try it over again, I probably would try the blackthroat just to see. I probably would, before I actually acquired a young one, I would probably work with an adult in the case of a blackthroat.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just temporarily borrowing one from somebody.
You know what monitor comes to mind that I think would be perfect for this?
What?
And I mean more perfect than an Argus monitor.
I'd love to hear that. What?
It's, you know what a lace monitor is, right?
Yeah.
So
I've thought about Lacey's too.
So it's basically a giant semi-arboreal Argus monitor, and what intrigues me is that, so they're closest relatives to the Komodo dragons, right? So they have those osteoderms, not as much as a black throat, and this is all hypothetical for anyone watching. They have those osteoderms, but they also come from areas that can dip down into cooler temperatures. I'm talking into the low 60s, right? Low 50s. So part of the year, if need be, they can go into sort of a dormancy or brumation. So theoretically, they could handle these colder temperatures. They get huge. I mean, they can get up to 6.5, 7 feet. So there's your size issue. Most of the time, they're very, very friendly. So you won't have to worry about any aggression or defensiveness for the most part. Just as, if not more food motivated than an Argus monitor, they have the ability where they can, if need whatever be, they can climb trees, they can go in the water. They're like an all-terrain animal.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
I've read the same stuff, that they're very, very cold tolerant, but based off of the fact that they do live in a lot colder environments for such a large lizard. I mean, they need heat like anything else. It just comes down to not being as sensitive to the cold. Yeah, and it's funny when you say cold, you always have to say that in quotes. Cold is room temperature. You know, we're not talking actual cold. We're talking
absolutely.
75, 80. Even 80 was pretty chilly for the Argus monitor.
Oh, a lace could go in 80, no problem. No, you would have no problem, because it could kind of overlap that range. Theoretically, like you said, the dogs and the minks can't take stuff. You want to keep them under 70, and then you could bring the lace in to kind of.
That is a very good point. Why in the world did I not think? That was one of the lizards I thought about. So I'm not saying I didn't think of them at all, but I don't know why I didn't put more serious thought into that. I'll have to. Yeah, I appreciate that. Jesus, makes me want to get back into it, and I really would love to. I absolutely would love to. But my thing is, I'm kind of funny. I don't, and I'm not against anyone who does it. So I'm not judging other people. I just judge myself. Mm-hmm. So I don't like having an animal that doesn't have a purpose and a goal. For me, for whatever reason, I don't know. I have this kind of obsession. An animal needs a purpose, and part of it is because I feel like the animal feels the same way. It's not just on me. Animals with a purpose have a much more fulfilling life than one that just exists to amuse me. And so if I was to get another monitor, I would need to have some silly excuse in my mind for getting it. Mm-hmm. I would need to have some job for it to do, even if it's a silly job, even if it's a joke. It's like I have ducks, but my ducks lay eggs for our family, right? I have a sheep, but my sheep provides milk for our family and mows my lawn. So I mean, even every little pet I have has some kind of silly purpose, usually. Sure.
If I would say, again, if there was ever a monitor to be the one to have that purpose for you and your job, I think lace monitor is it. So if we ever see a lace monitor on your channel, you gotta shout me out. You gotta say, I'll take the blame for that one.
Definitely. Yeah, I would love it if I could find another job for one. I would be a blast.
Thank you all so much for watching. Special thank you to Joseph Carter, the one and only Mink Man, for his time and for his information and his input on the trainability and intelligence of some amazing animal species. All his socials will be in the description below. Make sure you guys drop a comment on this video saying that you appreciate him and telling him thank you for stopping by. Yes, sir.
I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a fun conversation. And
yes, sir.
I still am blindsided to why a Lacey wasn't forefront in my mind this whole time. I don't know. Maybe maybe I saw them as too docile. Maybe I was misled because they are often very chill in the videos and stuff you see online. Because I've never actually even seen one, let alone handled one. Maybe that's it. Maybe I was misled to believe they're too quiet. Well, thanks for the idea. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, man. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you never miss when another banger drops. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.